Hello, this is the conclusion of my 30-day review for the giant Mouse Biblio. So what do? Is I actually carry and use knives, this is my own thing, for 30 days and report back on any sort of failures, break-in, wear down, issues with the knife after owning and using them for 30 days for my EDC. So I've carried this every day for 30 days, used it for like cutting down boxes, opening packages, yard work, all that kind of stuff. The exemption for this guy is I didn't use it for any food prep because I was just worried about staining the micarta. I'm a bit ignorant on the care and maintenance of micarta, so I just didn't expose it to that. So going into the knife. Giant Mouse Ace Biblio. What is Giant Mouse? Giant Mouse is a collaboration company owned by knife designers Jesper Voxness and Jen Zanzo. This is the green micarta version of the knife. It also comes in natural micarta and black G10 as part of the baseline versions of the knife. They also have two upgraded versions. There's a Blade HQ exclusive, which has carbon fiber, black carbon fiber, and they have a 2019 new edition for titanium. So those are the trims. There's 5 finishes, or 5. And then the next thing is going to be specifications. So assuming you didn't watch the first one or you can't read the specs online, the handle is 4 inches in the closed orientation, or about 102 millimeters. The blade, when deployed, is going to be 2.875 inches, or about 73 millimeters. And the overall length is 6.875 inches, or about 175 millimeters. Stock thickness on this guy is 0.12 inches, or 3 millimeters. The steel is M390, and that's the specs. So now we're going to go into some comparisons. Starting it off, I'm just going to compare it with, everyone has one, Swiss Army knife. So Victorinox, this would be the same as a Soldier Pioneer kind of size knife. So you can get a sense of the size of the blade compared to Victorinox and the handle. The next is going to be this is a Tucson TS123. This is going to be a little bit important later on when I talk about ergonomics. So this is basically the same 4-inch handle on this guy. You do get a bit more blade out of it. This is going to be another important comparison. This is a Spyderco Paramilitary 3. You're going to see for ergonomics and size overall comparisons why this is a very important comparison to the Biblio. And finally, everyone has a Delica. So here's a Delica. So there's a Delica. You can say just standard for a Delica. The Delica handle is quite a bit bigger, larger compared to the blade, but you do get about the same amount of blade from the Delica and the Biblio. So the next thing is going to be a tip review. So what does that mean? Going through all the features from back to front. So just in general, the micarta scales are sculpted. So this is the same for the carbon fiber, the G10, and the micarta. They're all like 3D sculpted, very beautifully done. The fitment on this is fantastic. There's no gaps anywhere, so everything is as it should be. It's fantastic in the hand, like when you're rubbing this as a worry stone or you have it deployed. Everything just feels nice for the handle material. So like full points on that. It's fantastic for the fitment and finish on the scales. Back to front, so the lanyard tube, it's about a single strand size tube on that guy, and it does run through a standoff tube. The tube is also, I forget the term, chamfered radius. It's like the CRK style, Chris Reeve knife style. So you could either wrap the lanyard around and tie it off so it sticks out this way, or you can run it through. And it's fortified, you don't have to worry about it getting cut in either way. It's very good design. I'm not a lanyard guy, but it's a very well designed lanyard system on that guy. The next thing is going to be the clip. I like this clip. It's a fantastic wire clip. So one of my big beefs, especially for things like the Paramilitary 3 or Para 3, I don't like pocket shred on knives. Like I have nice pants and I don't like it when they destroy my pants. This guy does a very good job for both retention, ease of access, all that stuff. It's fantastic. This is probably my number 2 favorite pocket clip after the North Arm Skaha. That's it's a little bit better in every way on the Skaha, but this guy is better than the Spyderco in my opinion. It's just it feels a little bit sturdier. The ramp is just a little bit different from the Spyderco, and it does do a great job. It also broke in quite nicely. So without me having to like lift it up, it naturally just found its happy spot, just a very small fraction of an inch away from the handle material. So the draw is extremely easy on this guy. I didn't have to do any sort of prying or trying to get it to be to my likeness. So in the reorientation of the pocket, you can see it sits quite deeply, but you have enough of a nub on there, and the knife is quite chubby, so you can get at the knife very easily. And the forward orientation of the pocket, same thing. It sits quite nicely in the pocket. I forgot to mention or look at this guy, but this is the kind of the girth of the knife. It is a bit of a chubby knife, and I actually didn't have a problem with that. It carries very well. It's a very nice compact at 4 inches. It's a very compact knife, and just the draw, the way that the handle is so smooth, you don't have any of the what's called like on titanium knives, the relief cuts. Nothing snags. It's a very smooth in and out. The carry on this guy, carry deployment, getting it out of your pocket, deployed to the work and back. It's very well done. So in that regard, it's full points. So far, the knife's looking great. Continuing back to front, the pivot design on this guy, I think the pivots are kind of getting overdone recently, and this is very simple, very clean, it's elegant. I like how the pivot and the hardware for maintaining the clip, they're matched, and it's just stylistically like Jesper and Jens, they absolutely nailed the design on this guy. It just looks gorgeous. And the pivot, so talking more about that, it was this was the only hardware on my knife that had any sort of thread locker on it. It was very easy to get off a white thread locker. I was able to take the knife apart, no issues, and it's running on bearings. So this knife is fantastic in that regard. Easy to take apart, easy to put back together, and it is running on bearings. There's a plethora of other YouTubes about the internals, so I'm not going to do that in this video since there's already tons of them. So again, the next thing, flipper. This is kind of where the knife fell apart for me a little bit. I got used to it, and it took about a week and a half or so, and then the knife just kind of came into its own and was running very well. Out of the factory, this knife was abysmal, and I just didn't like it at all out of the box. It wasn't near where it needed to be for action. This is a me issue. I suck at thumb flips. So I'm going to, there we go, got one out. So yeah, this is where the knife kind of started falling apart for me. The action out of the box was horrible. The knife was off center, favoring this side. They basically cranked the pivot down too much from the factory, and it wasn't running very well. I took it apart, cleaned off all the factory lube, put in some KPL, and even after that, it was running quite a bit better, but it wasn't near where it needed to be for this price point. Then after a week and a half, then like this guy, it is running where it needs to be at this price point. The just using this, it's very light. I can get it out with the thumb. It's not ripping at the skin, the fingernails. It's not hurting my fingers, and then I can reliably push button this knife. So all of the deployment versions or methods to deploy this knife, they all work, and it's fantastic at this point. So yeah, it works. Fantastic. The only thing that doesn't really work on this guy is light switching. To get the light switch to work on this, you can't load up the D10 ball and wait for it to break. You'll get a failure to fire. You have to do an exaggerated light switch and pull it quite a bit beyond the stop. So if I just do like the minimal effort, you won't get to fire. You have to do an exaggerated light switch, which isn't natural for me. When I light switch a knife that has a flipper, I just expect it to, like, minimum effort for it to work. But you get used to it, and this guy will deploy every way, like push button, light switch. It all works. You just have to get used to the idiosyncrasies of the knife. So action, broken, out of the box, not where it should be, broken. It's fine. Yay. Moving back to front. The next thing is the hole. I do prefer the Spyderco round hole. I do find that my finger kind of like rides and like slams into the front of this a little bit. I do like round holes better, but it works and it's great on that guy. The choil, this is my first big complaint on this knife. My hands aren't excessively large, but when I actually like bear down on this knife, either in a hammer grip or a saber grip, I find that I get a lot of meat onto the blade, and it's very uncomfortable. To mitigate that, I find that I actually pull my fat hand back a little bit, so I'm not putting any pressure on the flesh touching the steel, and that just, it's artificial strain in my grip. I'm engaging muscles that I shouldn't need to when I'm using a knife, and I just don't like it. Out of the box, the knife was hair-whittling sharp. I absolutely love the sheep's foot design, the contouring on the spine of the knife, the forward jimping, so when you do use the saber grip and you have a nice comfortable spot for your thumb to land, all of that works extremely well. But I do find that this choil is just plain too small, and it's not for me. And that kind of leads to like where things start falling down for me. So out of the box, this knife was hair whittling sharp. I could take the knife, put it on its back, and drag a hair. It would just whittle it. It was amazingly keen out of the box. But I feel like it wasn't a very good edge. Basically after one cardboard box, like tearing it down, so like a diaper box, I cut it on the corners and cut it into little pieces so it fits in the small blue bin recycling. That basically made this knife so it wouldn't cut paper anymore. Like M390 is supposed to be like the god steel, it's supposed to be amazing. And one box took this from hair whittling to it won't even cut paper anymore. Then I tried stropping it, honing it. Like, it probably just needs a good honing, it'll be fine. Didn't work. I tried Spyderco Sharp Maker, just touching it up, didn't work. The only thing that really got this blade to go is I had to spend quite a bit of time on some stones, hand stones, and that's where the sharpening choil is really nice. It actually works extremely well as a choil, but I got the heel extremely sharp so that when I'm gripping the knife, it would be cutting me. So I kind of have to like sharpen the knife and blunt the little back here a little bit so it doesn't cut. That's the thing. So like the steel, after I used stones and got just basically took off enough steel to get something fresh on there, this is about like a 15 box knife. Like in fixed blade terms, like you talk about knives being like a 1 deer, 2 deer knife. This is like a 15 cardboard box knife, like diaper boxes, cutting the corners, then cutting into little pieces so it fits. That's a lot of cardboard. And they take about like 15, so the longest I had this guy going was 15 boxes and doing yard work, like cutting suckers out of the trees and doing a little bit of trim work and stuff like that. And it's fine. Like there's no chips, no rolling. The steel is actually very good in this. I was expecting a little bit worse on the edge, and it's just the edge retention was a little bit off. It's at least as good as Spyderco S30V. I'm not doing empirical measurements where I'm like, how many linear inches did I cut? But my gut feel is this is at least as good as Spyderco S30V, if not a little bit better, after I put my own edge on it. And I'm not a good sharpener, so I'm pretty sure in capable hands, you can probably get this thing just screaming laser sharp. So I think that the blade is good to go. You just have to put in a little bit of effort, and you just have to worry about that little guy there. I found that I would deliberately blunt this a little bit after sharpening, just so I wouldn't cut myself as much. And that's where kind of like the other knife comparisons come back. So if you look at the Spyderco Paramilitary 3, the Para 3 is just a smidge longer than this guy, and that's mostly due to the lanyard tube placement, how they did their lanyard with the generous like double strand size. But the Para 3, like on the, sorry, go back to the Biblio. The Biblio only has like one comfortable way to hold this knife. You can only hold it in the saber or hammer position using the choil. There's a bit of a swell on the heel of the knife where the micarta is contoured and it gets fat here. So if you're holding it down on the handle, it's a small 4-finger grip, but it just like it gets fat where your smallest finger is, and it just becomes very uncomfortable to hold it in this position. It just simply, for me, in my hands, doesn't work very well in this orientation, either in a hammer or a saber grip. It's just not a very comfortable knife to hold. And that's why I always use this position, and then I have the choil issues. And then here comes the Para 3 comparison. Para 3, it's fantastic either in a hammer or a saber grip. It's a fantastically comfortable, easy to hold knife. If I choke up, again, either saber or hammer grip, this knife just, that's why like the Para 3 is popular for a reason, and the same with the Para 2. Like this knife is just fantastic for ergonomics, and I feel that this is subjective. This is a subjective part of the review. In my hands, this knife isn't great. If your hands are slightly bigger than mine, I feel you're going to have a lot of issues with the choil, and then you might have the same issues when you're using it this way. If your hand's a little bit bigger than mine, it just may not fit or fit comfortably in your hand. So your mileage may vary on that for ergonomics, and then that's where this guy also comes in. Both of these knives are 4 inches spot on for handle. They're the exact same handle length. And this is where like all of the contouring and the hump and the swelling, all the stuff that makes this feel good in this situation. This guy just, it's a neutral handle profile. This is also contoured handles, but it's comfortable no matter where you grip this knife. It's always comfortable. So it's not that it's a 4-inch handle that makes it uncomfortable. It's just the choices that were made regarding like the contouring here, making it fat in the back. And that's my biggest complaint about this knife is while it was it's a nice fidget toy and like the deployment's fun, the carry's great on this guy. I never really connected with this knife as much as a user because I didn't like holding this knife and cutting with this knife. I just didn't enjoy the experience of using this knife as a tool. So while the fit, finish, all that stuff, like the fitment of all the pieces were fantastic, except out of the factory, the centering was off and the action was off. But in terms of that one for the fitment, you can repair those issues very easily with a little bit of tinkering. Like 5 minutes, you got that thing fixed. So the fit finish on this guy, like everything fits well, it's all good. The only other issue is that there was quite a bit of inconsistent blade grind on this guy. It was a bit taller on one side of the tip than the other. It was like basically very consistent up until here, then there's a bit of difference. But fit finish on this guy, it's a well assembled knife. It's a great looking knife. Aesthetically, it's fantastic. It checks all the boxes. If you're into micarta, this is a really good example of my micarta flipper knife. It just for me, just due to the ergonomics, I found myself not connecting with the knife and not wanting to use it. In terms of carryability, it's fantastic. It's just when I take it out of my pocket, I just didn't like it. So that's my final conclusion really of this knife, is that it's a aesthetically very pleasing, well-built knife. After you get a little bit of sharpening and tuning done on this guy, it'll serve you very well if it fits your hands. And that's my biggest issue about this knife, is just the ergonomics for me are not there. And that's par for the course with me and Giant Mouse. This is my 5th Giant Mouse knife, and all of them had that where they're just like a hair off in ergo and they didn't work for me. And that's, again, totally subjective. Like, the Giant Mouse is popular for a reason. This knife fits the majority of people, it seems, and they like it a lot. So I would say either try before you buy, if possible. Go to your local group meets and just try one of these knives out. I like it for all the aesthetic reasons, but I don't think it's going to be sticking around. I tend to keep most of the knives in my collection, even that god-awful Kershaw I still have in the box, just to practice sharpening and whatnot on. But I think this guy is going to be moving along. This is 5 for 5 for Giant Mouses that I've had and just couldn't connect with. And it's not a failure of the knife, it's just I couldn't connect with it. So that's it for my 30 days. Hopefully you found it useful. Feel free to have questions, comments in the questions on the comments, and I'll try and get back to you. Thanks much for your time. Bye.